gums at each other any chance they get. The fight clock is brought to you by Modelo.
It's time
for you to sit back, relax, and listen to a complete and fucking utter armchair expert give his completely and utterly useless opinions on the one hell of an amazing sport that is MMA. G'day, guys. We'll speak about UFC 299, but first we've got a card recap to do, and we may as well just talk about it off the rip. As you all probably know, Volk lost at UFC 298, and he is now no longer the UFC featherweight champion of the world. I never thought I'd see it. I mean, realistically, you knew it would happen one day, but you would have hoped that it wouldn't have been as sudden or as violent as it was. Of course, in the lead up to it, in the lead up to the fatal sequence of events, it was pretty even. First round was pretty even, and then we went into the second round, and at the 3.5 minute mark, I was sort of half out of it, to be honest. I wasn't even half paying attention, and I looked up, heard the pub I was watching it in go off, and there it was. Volk was slumped on the ground, and we had a new featherweight champ, and I, along with the rest of Australia, was devastated. Credit to Volk, though. As always, he was all class, made no excuses, gave credit to Ilia, and rightly so. He went out, as I said in a tweet that I posted, he went out there and showed why he was undefeated, and now he's the champ, put the work in, and Volk will just go and rest and recover. I hope he takes at least 6 to 12 months off after this before he plans his next move, whatever that may be it an immediate rematch in did he say Spain, I think it was, or I think he said Spain, which is obviously where Ilia is from. Who knows, maybe that'll happen. That'll probably be a big fight, I imagine. But what the next moves are, who knows? All I know is I went home kind of devastated and shell-shocked. Very similar to how I felt when Izzy lost to Alex Pereira. Very devastated and shell-shocked. I don't think I said much at first. And then I think I said it was the UFC game cover curse, which is true, really, when you think about it. Izzy was on UFC 4, lost. Volk was on UFC 5, he lost. It's unfortunate. Maybe the UFC should stop putting these champions on game covers, and they'll still be dominant champs. But thankfully it wasn't all bad. At least Robert Whittaker got the dub over Paulo Costa, going to decision. I had thought Costa might have taken it, but they gave it to Rob, and that was a good outcome, I feel, even though I was technically betting against him, because I did think that the Dricus fight might have taken it out of him, but I'm glad it hasn't. And hopefully he'll be right back up there getting another shot at the middleweight champ, and a rematch with Dricus du Plessis, funnily enough. But anyway, guys, that was UFC 298 in a nutshell, really. And now we get on to what is a stacked UFC 299. But yeah, just going to take a short break as always. And when we come back, UFC 299. Oh, God, why did I say that twice? Far out. Bloody saying so many repetitive things. All that and more when I come back. I forgot to mention Yair, after beating Volk, called out Conor McGregor, which is funny as Conor has not been at 145 in a long time, and if you take one look at him, you'll realise that he's probably never fighting at 145 again. So it's just funny that he's got Conor McGregor's name in his mouth. Apparently, from what I've heard, he ain't the only one. Someone in his division's like, oh, you call out Conor, Khabib, you call out everyone but the only undefeated guy in your own division, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I heard that as I was walking out of the pub, and kind of was like, what? Why is he calling out Conor? But yeah, anyway, guys, just thought I'd mention that because that also happened. But anyway, UFC 299, O'Malley versus Vera 2, because I didn't realise when I first talked about it that they have fought before. Emanating out of the Kaseya Center in Miami, Florida, which I believe was the same building that Izzy won his title back in, against Alex Pereira, which probably doesn't back at UFC 287, I believe it was. Although it probably doesn't matter now. But ladies and gentlemen, as I realized earlier in the week, this is a stacked card. All 5 fights on the main card are fights that I want to see. We, of course, have the number 4 ranked Petr Yan. Petr Yan, you know, he's a favorite of mine from Russia. He's back, baby. The former bantamweight champion, of course, was controversially beaten by Aljamain Sterling, as we know. Taking on Song Yadong, ranked number 7, in a bantamweight bout to open up the main card. What a banger this is going to be. Let me just... I keep getting... the betting odds confused. Okay. So they're saying Yan's the favourite in that fight, which I hope he is. I'd love to see him get back up to the championship status and or championship contention, and see him get a rematch against Suga Sean potentially for the belt. That'd be good. Next up, we've got my boy Jack Della Maddalena, fellow Aussie, of course, came out to TNT at UFC 284 in Perth, which, as I talked about on the last podcast, and I believe I tweeted about, was a year ago. Crazy, man. Crazy. But yes, Jack Della Maddalena takes on Gilbert Burns in a welterweight bout. Sorry, I should have said number 4. Gilbert Burns, number 4, ranked number 4, Gilbert Burns versus ranked number 11, Jack Della Maddalena. They are saying Jack Della is the favourite. And I hope, being an Aussie, I of course hope he is. Keen as for that as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we of course get up to the debut of one Michael Venom Page, MVP. Going from Bellator over to the UFC, he faces Kevin Holland in his debut fight. And they've got no odds for this one. And of course, MVP's not ranked. Kevin Holland's ranked number 13. I do wonder if KSI will show up for this, because MVP is going to be in it. He, of course, is from England, and they train in the same gym, shoot fighters out of England. Would be ironic if he did, because MVP's in the UFC, KSI is there, and Prime is on the canvas, which, of course, as we know, the Prime sponsorship was announced at UFC 284 a year ago. See, it all ties back into each other. But extremely keen for that. Kind of hope MVP wins, because if he does, you would think that he is only a stone's throw away from the title, and one would naturally think that that is going to be him versus Leon Edwards in England, which will be a huge fight, ladies and gentlemen, which I hope that happens. But we now get to the co-main event of the evening. Rank number 3, Dustin the Diamond Poirier is back against Benoit Saint Denis. Of course, sorry, I forgot to do the rankings. The Diamond is rank 3 versus rank 12 Benoit Saint Denis. They are saying the Frenchman is going to win. I hope not. I love the Diamond. Scrapper. I saw a post of a quote that he made saying, I know, realistically, I don't know it word for word, but he was more or less saying that he's coming to the end of his career. He was like, realistically, I can't do this forever. I think he might have said, I got a family, I don't want to fuck myself up too much, and all that sort of stuff. And man, it makes me sad to hear that. I've always loved Dustin. He seems like one of those guys you'd love to meet. He just seems like a very nice, wholesome person. And a lot of people call him a journeyman because he never won a title. Well, he went up against the best in the world. Khabib, and he had 2 title shots, didn't he? Who was the other one against? Oh, Khabib and Charles, I think it was, wasn't it? I think. Yeah, I think it was Khabib and Charles. But he went up against the best in the world and he lost, and there's no shame in that. Ultimately you've got to have fighters like Dustin, otherwise the cards aren't interesting. And a lot of people make fun of him crying for losing against Khabib. Well, they're the people that make sure men don't show their emotions. And of course, what happens after that? You're a part of the problem. But anyway, back to MMA. We now, of course, get to the main event of the evening. Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera for the Bantamweight Championship. Marlon Vera is ranked number 5. I forgot to say that. They're saying Sugar Show is going to win. He'll be wearing pink shorts to the octagon, which is interesting. I suppose it matches his hair. But yeah, definitely a charismatic fighter. Made himself a cash cow to a degree. Probably, like True Geordie said, one of the few to get through the, I guess, the brass ring, for lack of a better term, and make himself a personality and make himself famous. Like Izzy, and there's been a few others, quirky personalities, sort of. Yeah, I hope he takes it, and hopefully we can get a rematch with Yan, maybe, if he gets back up there, or who knows, maybe even Sterling, maybe even Yan faces Sterling again for the chance at the belt. Who knows if Yan wins his fight, which I, of course, hope he does. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is UFC 299. I am very, very keen for it indeed. As I said, every fight on the main card is one I want to watch. It is stacked, and I will not waste a moment watching any of those fights. But, of course, this podcast is not over yet, ladies and gentlemen, because when we come back, we're going to discuss a few other things, including UFC 300, which is very close indeed to being a reality. Jesus, how often have I talked about it? I also want to talk about boxing very briefly, because things are kind of interesting over there at the moment. And let's talk about Conor again, because I saw a social media comment about him that was interesting. But as always, all that and more when I come back. UFC 300 is next month. How crazy is that? I was actually just saying to my mate the other day, I could still remember, as I think I've said before on this podcast and on our socials, when we first started watching UFC 246, Conor versus Cowboy, and that was now 4 years ago, and we're now up to UFC 300. How friggin' crazy is that? Of course, it's not the star-studded card that I guess we would have hoped for in the, what do you call it? Sorry. It's not the star-studded card in that, they didn't bring the big guns like Conor out. But it's still stacked in its own way. It's got Holly Holm on it. She's taking on Kayla Harrison, who's making her debut. Cody Garbrandt's going to be on it. Aljo's on it. Aljamain Sterling, far out. Yuri Prohaska, the former light heavyweight champion, is on it. Charles Oliveira, the former lightweight champion's on it. We've, of course, got the fight that I'm very gassed for. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway in his lightweight debut for the BMF title. Wei Li is back on it, defending her women's strawweight championship in the co-main event, which of course leads us to the main event of Alex Poatan Pereira defending his light heavyweight championship against the former champ Jamal Hill, which on any other card would have been a welcome fight, except for the fact that it's UFC 300 and everyone expected it to be star-studded. But I am very much so keen for it, although I don't know where the time's gone, honestly. I've been watching I've been watching this sport keenly for 4 years, and it'll be 2 years soon since it actually really technically already is 2 years since this podcast started, because we did the first episode in I think February 2022. So wow, that in itself is crazy. But yeah, time flies, man, and it segues perfectly, I suppose, into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is, of course, Conor. We've had plenty of debates about when he'll come back. I think a lot of people had hoped he would come back on UFC 300, me included, because I thought if they couldn't get him on UFC 200, then they'd probably try and get him on UFC 300, but it now appears as if that's not going to happen, and who knows really when it's going to happen. And I saw an interesting social media comment on a post asking when Conor will come back, or if he'll come back. And it said, for the sake of the sport, I hope he doesn't. And it got me thinking. On one hand, I do want to see Conor come back because I want to see him fight a couple more times and end his career on a somewhat pleasant note. But on the other hand, as much as I'm a fan of him and I love what he did for this sport and I'll always respect him for it, I've got to acknowledge, like, his rise did halt a lot of careers and deserving title contenders. And given how on fire the sport is at the moment, you would want to hope he doesn't plan on having an extended stay, because of course he would be hogging the main event, and that would be a main event gone from someone who really probably does deserve it, if we're being honest. So I do hope he does fight again, but I do hope he doesn't plan on, staying for an extended amount of time, because it is clear that he hasn't got what it takes to contend at the top anymore like he used to. But anyway, we'll see what happens with that, because I want to end this podcast by talking about boxing very quick. It is a good week for fighting in general, because of course tomorrow, or it'll be Sunday in Australia like the UFC, or it could be today actually, because it was apparently meant to be Friday, so it could be broadcast today. But we've got Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua, Francis versus Anthony Joshua. Of course, we know what happened with him and Fury. He basically more or less won, and I made a whole ass argument on that in another episode. He's now fighting Anthony Joshua. He'll now have fought two of the greatest heavyweights that boxing has ever seen. Man, what a story. I mean, you know, got shafted by the UFC, and, you know, went and arguably beat Tyson Fury, but certainly gave MMA a good showing, and got a boatload of money doing it. He's now fighting Anthony Joshua. He's going to be alternating between boxing and MMA possibly, and yeah, what a story. After all he's been through to, you know, be in this spotlight. People say he mishandled his UFC exit. I say, look at him now. He's got all the money. He arguably beat Fury, like I said, and he's fighting another heavyweight boxer. I won't see that, but I'm very keen for it, and I hope Francis either wins, because if he does, he'll get a shot at the boxing heavyweight champion. I mean, can you imagine if he bloody becomes boxing heavyweight champion? Far out. Boxing will be turned on its head, but I at very least hope that he has another good showing. Yeah, I'm definitely rooting for him, man. But I want to end this podcast off talking about someone who I wouldn't normally talk about very briefly. Jake Paul. It was just announced that he will be fighting Mike Tyson in Texas at AT&T Stadium, 80,000 capacity, live on Netflix, which is crazy in itself, in July. I don't want to go into Jake extensively, because as much as he's fought a whole heap of other MMA fighters, that's not what this show's about. I do want to talk about Mike, though, because I think we all love him. Absolute legend. He loves MMA as well, and I do wish he wouldn't do this, especially against a young, hungry guy like Jake, because he probably won't fare well, let's be honest. Yes, he is still a fit, hungry guy who punches hard for 58 years old, but, well, he is 58 years old. And realistically, he shouldn't be doing this, but I don't know, guys. Anyway, let's just see what happens. Let's hope Mike does not get embarrassed, because none of us want to see that. I can't begrudge him for wanting the money. You know, he's probably seen all these guys make a boatload of it in these exhibitions and says, I want a piece of that, and rightly so. For his career, he's probably earned it, but I just hope he doesn't get embarrassed, man. I really don't. He should just remain as a legend, but oh well. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoy these fights, as I certainly will, because like I said, they're stacked wherever you're watching them from. Watching them from, be it at home or at a pub like I probably will be. And till UFC 300, gee whiz, like always, catches.